Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to what's going to be the first of many community conversations we'll have here at the Vine Barbecue in Dumfries, Virginia. My name is John Reid. I'm the editor of the PW Perspective, and joining us today is a very distinguished man who has done so much in the community and for generations through. Mr. Willie Toney. Sir, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
We'll go ahead and get started, Mr. Toney, if we could, please. And so let's talk a little bit about your time in high school in Wilmington, North Carolina, sir, and where your journey began in starting in those days.
Just thinking, reflecting back on those days, sometimes you are cast in positions that, just naturally put you in a leadership role. First of all, I was quarterback of a high school football team that got closed out my senior year. Moving into my senior year in high school, the school was closed down due to forced integration. Some of you may remember. This was back in 1968. Most of the people in the community knew me. I had some other little academic kinds of advances during my school year, so I was known by the kids in the community as well as the educators. So when the school got integrated, I was called upon by some of the educators to help them develop sort of an integration plan, because the plan came down in like the summer of that year, and they had about 3 or 4 months to actually do this. So one of my guidance counselors from the school came by, asked my mother, would she allow me to come and address the school board? I didn't even know what a school board was. I had never even seen anything like that. So here I was in this room with at that time all I saw was about 7 or 8 gray-haired white ladies, men asking me questions about what I thought. And then again, I realized too that we had closed down a 99-year-old black high school, one of the oldest high schools in the state of North Carolina. And they were busing us out to a school that was integrated. This school was only 2 years old. So this school had no traditions. So I was able to sit down with those folks and negotiate some of the traditions that we had. For example, every spring, most schools elect their officers for the upcoming year. So, the junior class, sophomore class, senior class, and all of that. So when they closed our school and sent us out there, the school, Harvard High School, that already had the officers. So I was able to go in and sit down and talk to the administrators, and they agreed to have co-officers for the entire year. So sit down, I had to write up amendments to that school's constitution. I wrote them up, had them reviewed by the school counselor that was mentoring me at the time, and it was accepted. All those kids were sworn in as co-president, co-vice president of each class, and co-secretary and all that. So all of the people that we elected, they didn't lose anything. One of the things that I felt my input did was most of us graduated that year. There was a little problems from time to time because this was first year integration. Now, after I graduated, that same high school, the first of the following year, they had a major riot that closed that school down for 3 months. Another thing about the school, at that time, when they forced us to that school, in the state of North Carolina, John T. Harlan in 1968 was the largest high school, had the largest enrollment in the entire state. They had 2,300 plus students in that school. They only had 11th and 12th graders. There wasn't room for the 10th graders. So it was a forced thing. And what they did was it sort of pushed me out. Folks kind of saw that, I kind of brought something to the table, I guess. And it also gave me a little confidence in myself too. Because I could sit down with people and put plans together and actually watch those plans come to fruition. That did a little something for me, and that was to serve me well as I moved through life. To be able to slow down and just look at something, develop a vision about what it is, identify long, short-term goals, factor out the steps you need to accomplish those things and move forward. So that's where it kind of started. And also I want to mention that a lot of those folks that worked with me my senior year in high school, when I left and went to college, several of those people became what's known now as the Wilmington 10. You're talking about fear. There definitely was fear. Everything, there was so much uncertainty. because the status quo, they had the power, so to speak. Although you live in a black community, everything around you was white. Up until I was 16 years old, I'd only seen white and black. Understand? In my immediate world and the things that I've done, I'd seen on TV, but I had only been associated with white and black people in North Carolina and South Carolina where I grew. Now, I could say that in 1960, but before I go to that, let me just, at one point you asked, when I was working with that group to rewrite the school's constitution and do other things in my senior in high school, John Carlos and
Tommy Smith,
right, had given the Black Power sign, and that started something worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
So I was telling my group, because I said, listen, when we go to the assembly for this team, there was about 9 of us together. I said, we're going to do the Black Power sign. Everybody said, oh yeah, let's do that. So we're in this big auditorium with about maybe 900 people. So when they called us to stand up to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, I stood up, looked around, and when they started, I threw it up. I looked around, I was so, I was the only one there. It was up there then, talking fear. But I couldn't put it down when it was there. So at the end of the day, at the end of the assembly, I got called to the office. Several people had questioned me about what was my intent, blah, 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 this and that. But when I left that office, they had appointed me chairman of a group to mitigate issues out in the school. So, and that principal, his name was Mr. Garganus. This is 56 years ago. I don't know how his name popped up there. But he had a lot of, faith in me, because he would call my mother, ask my mother, and I involved with him. He was a white man. I could do some things. Some charges just kind of come to you. You can turn your back and go the other way, or you see these people coming to you asking you about things that you know you can provide a solution for, or at least some direction for. So that's how I got involved with that. Went to college, majored in psychology and sociology. I was an honor student, believe it or not, the first couple of years, but the social life kind of got to me. So I had to get out of class, but I did graduate on time. And, I think I like to call myself a social psychologist because I carried a double major. Some people wouldn't understand. I had 36 hours in psychology and 33 hours in sociology. So understanding from that perspective, with those disciplines, the impact an individual could have on the group, as well as the impact a group can have on the individual. Those are the things that help craft all the things that I've done during this lifestyle. Recognizing that one person can definitely impact a group, as well as a good group can influence a person.
Absolutely.
My motto is don't just complain, contribute. And I think that lends itself to a lot of what Mr. Toney is saying is you cannot be afraid to get involved. And it's not enough to just sit back and complain about what you don't like or what you don't, what things you want to see done differently. You have to be willing to stand up and speak about it. And everybody, during all the protesting that was going on over the summer with regard to the injustices we were seeing in the news, there were protesters everywhere. And, I brought together a group of people and I put together a demonstration of solidarity. And with that, one of the things I said is that I, for one, am not a protester. I'm not cut from the cloth of a protester. Everybody has their part to play. And I think it's important that folks recognize the part that they have to play and be willing to stand up and say something to do something about it. So the protesters got their attention. And my call was, okay, now what do we do now that we have their attention? We can't just complain about what we don't like. We can't just walk through the streets and march and we don't like it and pay attention to us. Because then when they start listening, we have to be ready to tell them something and have a conversation where we're strategizing and we're educating and we're advocating and agitating and getting things done. And I think that that's really what Mr. Toney represents. And that's what I hope to be able to instill in the next generation that will come behind me based on the lessons that I've learned from Mr. Toney.
Beautiful. Tammi, can you put this on?
Okay. So, Mr. Toney, Thank you for sharing your story and your journey to get here. I do know that you had some experiences while on town council, and literally you really fought with what we would say the man, right? And I appreciate your courage, and I appreciate you being the example for a lot of us, because oftentimes when we come up against the man, we get frustrated and we kind of step back, right? But what I've seen you do is continue to push through, push and then push through. But I had the opportunity of attending your dedication of the basketball court for the children of Dumfries. And with that, I want you, the speech you gave was extremely powerful. And what advice would you give us as we see what has happened in the news, right? And we're sitting here and we want to contribute and not complain. But how do we contribute and not complain when it may appear that the fight may not even be our fight, but it's the man? I don't know, there's a lot of things in there, right, to unpack, but I know you can do it.
When I look at change, you look at people who put in a position to change, to initiate change. I've looked at some people are socially oriented. They are about having people and working to better the lives of people. Then you got other folks that are economically oriented. And if you're a businessman, what your job is as a businessman, you're trying to make money. So you might, as a side or what's called a latent function, might try to help benefit some people through that, but ultimately you want to make money. I've always been a social person. I've never, if I got something, I'm giving it away anyway. So the idea of being rich, I forgot about that a long time ago. But when I saw an opportunity to impact on the day-to-day lives of people in my immediate environment, I guess through coming through the steps, I was able to just recognize that, just like you are, and she is at this point. There are some things you can do. You have to identify attainable goals, something that you can actually make happen. It wasn't, well, from where I sat, it wasn't feasible to think that I could become a governor. I mean, I just didn't see that. Maybe it could if I had put some energy, but that wasn't a goal of mine. I didn't think that I was wanted to be, and I did run for mayor one time, felt like I was ready at that time. But I'm not one to think that I'm here forever to be. So I have to put things in place with other folks who struck me. And I would say, good Lord gave me an eye to identify people that I thought could carry on this mission. And for the most part, I've been correct. And that's what reinforces you. You make decisions and they come out as you anticipate them. Then that emboldens you to move forward. That's the empowerment. You make decisions and you get other people involved with them and moving together collectively. You're able to achieve those goals incrementally, maybe, but you can see movement. You can see people moving forward. And it was something that the vice mayor indicated about the roles. And I think you hit on it. And it also brought me back to when you was talking about the various players during the civil rights era. Everybody had a role to play. All those individuals. Now Martin was more or less the chief negotiator, but those other folks, they contributed too. Because people rather see Martin coming to town than see some of the other folks. You know what I mean? Yeah. So everybody contributed to moving forward the cause. And that's necessary.
And I want to expand on that for just a moment. You talk about social psychology, and especially in Black people, because we've seen, especially during the civil rights era, where we talk about the mindset of a culture and how we've been the victims of so much discrimination and through racism. So, for someone, can you speak to that as to things that you saw, especially as far as what was the overall impact on our community, psychologically and socially? How everything we dealt with led us to where we're at today.
See, again, I'm from the South, born and raised on the sharecropper's farm. I actually raised in a city, but those roots are with me. Yes. Recognizing, where my folks, where they came from. and I actually seen how far I've come to this day. But one thing that struck me was getting the mindset. Most people just want to exist, want to go about their day-to-day living and live in peace. But some folks look at some things and see what it can be, and they develop a vision. And they recognize this don't have to be like this. Those are the ones we call radicals. When they step out and start instituting plans that's going to challenge the status quo and move things in a different direction. I've seen that. And a lot of times you meet with resistance within your own community with that. Whoa, why are you stirring up trouble? For example, Malcolm X. Malcolm X was seen as back in 67, 68 as a troublemaker. And yeah, he's bigger, and I might be one of the few people say this, but he's bigger in death than he was in life. Although he was growing. His legacy was there. He was creating people. A lot of times, people didn't really want Malcolm X to come to their town because they stirred up, especially down in the South. Right. But things had to change. Things had to change, just as they must do now. You got to have people, and we keep talking in turn about being at the table, but being at the table is not just enough these days. You have to speak up when you're there. And I was with some folks. Sometimes you have to, sometimes, all the time, when you're the only African American at the table, you got to educate, you got to advocate, and then you got to put in some action. And sometimes you may even have to agitate. Again, my influence was more or less local. I didn't have the county-wide recognition that Al had, but working together, when people saw that kind of person Al was, because he's very adamant about getting things done. My thing was, let's put some strategies together. Let's sit down and plan this thing so as we implement, we can see the gains, you can see attaining certain goals. And we've been very successful. He's right. We just sit there because I wrote down on one of my goals in 28 was to change the political environment of this community, of this county. Specifically stated that. My goal was to change the political environment of this county. That's what these boards I talk about, the board of county supervisors, as well as the board of the school board. And we worked to get several of those folks, including Ms. Laurie Williams, Diane Ralston. Immediately we worked with those folks. Because I think when Laurie we sat down to show her how to put her plan together. She had a lot of pieces already in place. And she acknowledged that the other day. I kind of forgot about it. She reminded me about that. But then Al was introducing us, pushing me out with him, introducing me to people on a county-wide basis. And we were actually helping them, and you see the results.
So you and Al started the African American Democratic Club in Prince William County. Tell us a little bit of why you did that instead of really jumping into the county party.
Well, some of the things over the years you recognize that, and I keep using the term the status quo, but what I'm talking about. Those folks, they realize that black folks, they don't need to do a whole lot. If you're a white Democrat, you don't need to do a whole lot to get black folks to vote for you. Because we already oriented and sort of, brainwashed to just be into that party. Whether they do for us or not. Everybody, you Democrat, bam. I saw that all the while when I was in D.C. D.C. is just about 75% Democratic town anyway. That's why it's being resisted by the Republicans coming in. But anyway, that's another story. But coming down, and I went to a meeting out in South Bridge out there. No, that was before that, right up the street here. Port Potomac, right over on the other side from you. A young man sitting there telling me I'm the only African American in the room. And he's African American. So he was having a meeting, about 7, 8 of us. He's sitting there, he said, he's put up a matrix. He said, you got the undecideds, you got the halfway decided, and then you got the people that are sure. So the people that are sure, talking about Democrats now. He said all the people that are sure when this group here. He said, well, they sure we ain't got to spend no money over there. So, that was a slap to me. I'm sitting there. because they were hiring people in other communities to do things. This is one of these, I forgot, was it Macaulay or somebody else like that was running during that time. I'm still listening like this. So their thing was to put all their money on trying to get those undecided votes. They weren't really concerned about black folks. They weren't concerned about what our concern was, but they knew we already was in the bag. So I'm sitting and listening to this guy. Then I go to the meetings. All the committees are chaired by white folks. I'm talking about 2007, 2008, like that. The whole agenda, all that's being pushed. Anybody who look like me or whatever, we got to be angry to say something. We're not being respected. It wasn't real hard to step back and look at. We're Democrats, but do we have to align ourselves with this group and also be taken for granted and not having a voice or any kind of influence on where this party's moving? I gained a reputation as being thorough about that. And in fact, Trayvon White, who was the current Ward 8, when he ran initially, they tapped me. That's when I left out here. When me and Al was this was in 2012. Me and Al was in 2008. Was at first gotten together, and we started helping people put political campaigns together. So I would put the plans together, and Al would execute. So I said, well, Al, man, listen, I got to go help this dude. And he ended up winning too. Large, he won big. That was 2008, I think it was. Yeah, because he also ran on the back of Barry and Obama. They had a triple butt. I was the one who helped put that campaign together. And I've been doing that. But when I came down here, I'm walking and I'm seeing things. I go into town hall, I don't see nobody there that looks like me. The lady sitting in the front at the desk, Peaches, her name was. And then I went to one of the town meetings with Mr. Washington. Mr. Washington, he was the only African American on the board then. So, like with this, when our vice mayor here, I asked him, let me get on one of these committees. So I was put on the Board of Zoning Appeals first. The Board of Zoning Appeals, like, sent me off to Virginia Tech for the training and all this. Stayed on there. Then the second year I was on the Board of Zoning Appeals, I saw that the board, the BZA, allowed for one person to be on the planning commission. So the rest of the people, they didn't see that. So I applied, and everybody said, you want to be on it? Because the BZA only met so often because there weren't a lot of issues. So I was appointed to the planning commission here in this town of Dumfries. So I remained on the BZA for 8 years and on the planning commission for 7 years. I spent several years, I was vice chairman of the BZA several years and became planning commission chairman several years. That's why it was important. And you also learn how to work on these boards and commissions down here. And then meanwhile, you saw the administration up there, that town hall was what it was. So at that time in 2008, when I got elected to the council, and that's when I ran into, and we was at I think I heard Al talk about it before, we was at a Democratic fundraiser they have every year over on Midville Road at the DFW. We sat there for 2 hours, and not one African American went through that stage, did in the presentation, did in the speeches, did anything. I said, this can't be. And we had several other African Americans that were sitting around, including the babies, who is the current supervisor. I was sitting at the table with them. And not one African American went across the table. That got me irate. How you gonna have us in here? We're supposed to be an inclusive thing, and everybody up there is white for 2 hours. I've never been afraid of the man, so to speak. And that's the other part about it. For some reason, when I was a kid, I'm telling you, 5, 6, 7 years old, my mother used to have to kind of grab me because I was not intimidated. I don't know where, maybe that's something innate. And I know I was afraid, I was telling you. So if I need to say something to my mother, be quiet. I'm talking 6, 7 years old. So I guess here I am at 70, still doing it. And again, I go back to, and I've never been, I don't think, selfish. You know, all of my goals and objectives for this community has been to benefit this community. You know, and I think that my actions past and present would reflect that. Again, power is no good unless you know how to use it. I understood the power of majority vote. Understood that. So I maneuvered, worked, and got people. That's why I got the other 4 African Americans on the council with me. When you was working with a mayor who came out of the military, so he was used to unilateral kind of power. You command, I'm the man, you command, and everybody else is lockstep. But that's not how politics work. So I've been working with politics as long as he was in the army. You know, he taking giving orders, I'm negotiating. I'm learning how to meet common ground with people. You know, how to identify, how to educate them and advocate for whatever issues I thought were necessary. So these are the things I try to impart to those that came behind me and show them how to do that.
Can I just ask one quick question? Mr. Toney, as we are nearing the end of this conversation, what do you want folks to take away from today's conversation as far as what's next? What's next for us as a people, for the young folks that are watching? What should they start doing today in preparation for what's next for us as people?
Very good question. I think that, first of all, we're not going to give it up. We're going to continue to move forward. We're going to continue to have expectations from those that we got at the table now. You got to hold them accountable for making some things different, for challenging the status quo. Because they sit there and comfortably and get those little checks and sit down and laugh and joke with those folks on the podium with them. And you got entrenched administration, be it the county board of the county executive and all these people. These people work for you. They've been in place 15, 20 years. They got a layered, good old boy network in place. So that's what I see. So then you got to start replacing that. You got to start breaking that down. You got a lot of African Americans and brown folks who've been trying to penetrate those things for years. So they keep beating them down. So this is what I'm advised to you and all those other folks that sit on these boards. Have some gall. You know, see what you need to do and get together and work for it, and then you can make it happen. Because again, power is no good unless you use it. Right. You can vote people in, you can vote people out. That would be my thing. But also keep grooming folks, keep looking for folks, people who have the heart. And you keep, I mean, you might just be afraid, because I'm afraid sometimes. But they're willing to go forth anyway. You know, so those are what I would advise you. Keep doing what you're doing. I think you're doing a swell job, and I've told you that before. And I think that this body that we elected down here has shown this county that it can be done. Power concedes nothing without a struggle. Well, we got power, we will learn how to use it. Absolutely. So use it. But thank you all for this opportunity, and I look forward to continuing our association working together with you all. And thank you, sir, for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Let's all give Mr. Toney a hand for all his work. Thank you so much.